Hi guys, I'm Dave, and these are the StepManiaX 4th generation dance pads we just got. Let me start off by saying I don't usually do video reviews like this, so I'm going to apologize for the poor quality, and I just wanted to throw something together quickly since it really doesn't seem like there's a lot of information out there on these, particularly the newest generation. I see a question on forums and Reddit and Discord a lot. What new pad should I get? It's a pretty common question, and these come up, and there's just not a lot of information out there on them. So I thought I'd put together a quick video talking about my experiences getting them set up, initial impressions after use, and that kind of thing. So that being said, let's dig in. I guess we'll start off from the beginning in terms of the packaging it comes in. Comes in a kind of small wooden crate that's roughly the same size as the imprint of one of these. It's very flat. It's maybe about, that high, the box itself. The crate it comes in. The bar comes disconnected. And honestly, maybe my first criticism of these actually is with regards to the packaging, because in terms of how it ships, it's pretty bare bones. It actually comes laying flipped over, so the top surface where the sensors and the plates, the acrylic plates are, is actually on the bottom of the crate, and it's flush against the bottom. The bar comes disconnected, and then the manual, the power cords, the extra plate that you get that you can put in the middle sensor area, they're all disconnected, and they're kind of on the bottom. There's a little kind of indentation where all that rests in when it's shipping. And fortunately I didn't have any problems with regards to the shipping. Like the top surface is coated with a almost like an adhesive, like the plastics you get on new equipment and appliances and things like that. It was a little harder than I would have liked to remove, particularly the kind that they had on the acrylic plates itself. But that being said, even though the top surface, the main surface, was flush with the bottom of the shipping crate, I can't really see any significant damage to the surface. There's a little bit of very, very minor scratches and scuffs in a couple of places, but really very minimal, and especially the acrylics themselves are, very durable, and I couldn't see any scratches on them due to the process. So that seems to have come through fine. So in terms of setup and assembly, let me just say these things are incredibly heavy. I think each one clocks in at somewhere north of, I think it's between 200 and 250 pounds. So, I have these set up in the basement. It's quite a project to get them. Like I said, they come upside down, so you have to flip them over to the wheels. If you've got stairs anywhere that you need to go up and down, it's definitely, a 2 or 3 person job, even for, if you got pretty strong people who want to help you out. Like I said, got mine down in the basement, but everything, went fine in that regard. 2 person job, did it with my wife, no big deal. All right, so that's kind of like the packaging comes in, which, like I said, very bare bones, but not really an issue. Then set up an assembly. Like I said, the unit comes almost entirely assembled. The only major part is the bar is disconnected, and that just screws into the bottom with 2 bolts. So it comes with the bar, it comes with, we got a checking list here, a kind of brief manual. And then you have one of these plates that, can be used to replace the center sensor if you're just doing 4 arrow. I need to clean this off. It's got a little bit of grime from transit, which wasn't great either, but again, no real big issues there. So the main part, you put the bar on, you screw it in with these 2 big bolts, which are around the bottom back here. And it's very, very solid. I'm a pretty big guy, I'm like, north of 200, and I can't move them at all. So I don't really foresee any issues with those. And then the rest of the setup, most of the time, is actually removing the adhesive protection layer that was on top of the acrylics in the the top of the stages in general, and that wasn't really that much of a problem. These protection covers for the power cord and the micro USB, both of those are included. It's micro USB on that end, and then USB on the computer. And there's power cord, and again, this is accessible through, there's a little area underneath here. You'd have to remove this to remove the power cord, but the power switch is, which is recessed in here, is accessible. You just have to reach around to it. And then, like I said, the USB cord hooks up. Again, there's a little gap underneath there. And I think these are just to, you know, if you're stepping forward off the machine, to protect those wires, and they seem to work well. In terms of other physical setup, there's not really much else going on. The wheels have this nice locking mechanism, this red thing, if you can see that, yeah, where these will actually, they'll screw to lift the stage off the ground, make an offset. So this is actually nice if you're on a slightly uneven surface. This floor is pretty flat. This is just tile on concrete slab, so it's fairly even, but there is a little bit of irregularity. But you know, adjusting it with these wheel screws for the feet was very easy, and then there's a little locking washer that locks them in place, and they're not going anywhere. All right. The last little bit of setup, if you are fortunate enough to have two of these in a doubles configuration, as you can see, we've got a little V-shaped bracket that goes right into the middle of these. Right here, there's 6 in the front, 6 in the back, and again, very, very solid, not going anywhere. Also, they have these on the front and on the back there, you can see. So, I mean, I guess theoretically you could just connect an arbitrary number of these things if you had the brackets. I don't know, it might be good for tournament play or something like that. But again, very solid. And I guess I do just want to comment that, you know, I've seen some questions online, you know, how heavy is this? How are the feet? You know, should I put it on a wooden surface, that kind of thing? Should I put it in a garage? I would say you want it on a very, very solid surface. It's very heavy. You know, if it is on a second floor or, you know, an above ground floor where it's not sitting on a slab, you know, especially, you know, if you're a bigger guy, you're jumping up and down on this thing, I don't think you want it on anything less than a very, very solid ground floor surface or an extremely solid upper floor surface to place it on. Alrighty, so that being said, what can we go to next? All right, so in terms of the sensors themselves, I guess I'll give you a rundown of some of the internals. I have one of the panels over here open, and I'll just lift this up. 1 second. Yep, and there is the controller for the sensors, the guts of the individual panels. So you can see instead of the switches that we're used to, these are just these large, long, flat capacitive strips. And the motherboard itself there, the controller, you can see has these little grid of 25 multicolor LED lights, which we'll get to see in just a second. In terms of the acrylic plates themselves, these guys are incredibly thick and solid. They've got no flex to them at all. You know, they're maybe the highest single element to the build quality. You know, you got this nice frosted top so you can see through. So that's what the sensor panels look like. That's the 5 arrows, and then the corner panels here do have a lighted component, but they do not come with sensors by default. And yeah, but there are conversion kits you can get, and I believe, I haven't tried it yet, but if you want to switch the panels, you know, do like a pump it up configuration or something like that, it's not really a big deal. So, all right, and I guess let's just turn it on and see what it looks like. I actually have them plugged into a power strip so that we can see them sync up when they're powered on. There we go. Excellent. All right. Yep, and they load up, and they have these nice little holding animated patterns. They actually don't come through super well on this camera. These lights are bright, by the way. If this thing, let me just, I'll actually do that in a second, but these things are very, very bright. They put out a ton of light. They look great. They have this animated holding pattern. I haven't customized them yet, but apparently you can do that. And there's an application, a tool you can download from StepManiaX that lets you mess with the lights and the sensor settings and things like that. So let's actually check that out next. All right, so here's the utility function. And one thing in particular, so I thought at first that these side arrows had the diagonals lit up because of demos, but you actually do have to enable them in the control panel. Click light all panels, and bam, we've got 9 panels of beautiful bright light, and this is what I wanted to show you. I'm actually gonna turn the lights out down here. My basement's pretty dark, and these things, they light up the whole room, really. It's crazy bright. I didn't know this at first, but they actually have running lights. I didn't expect that, but nice little bonus. So they've got these blue fluorescents along the side and the bottom, and it really looks great overall. So now back to the tool. Very, very useful. Space Marine Cat thinks it's about damn time. And you've got a bunch of different settings here. You've got panel sensitivity defaults up here. You've got panel colors, animations. Like I said, I haven't really messed with changing the animations. You can customize the panel light patterns. There's sensitivity bracketing. You can kind of adjust these for the individual panels, the top, the middle, and then the bottom 4. You can kind of have customized sensitivity settings for those 3 groupings of arrows, which is nice. And then you can change which panels are active. I'm probably just going to do 4 arrow, at least to start out with. So for instance, if I wanted to add the metal plate onto the middle section, for instance, I could turn off the center panel there. I could turn off any of them if I wanted to. And, I guess that would be useful in a situation if I wanted to conserve some sensors, maybe have some built-in spares if I'm just doing 4 arrows, that kind of thing. Like I said, that's where the thing where you turn on the diagonal panels, which are not on by default. You need to set that up through the tool. There's a thing to export the settings. And then, and this is the highlight, I think, is the diagnostic settings for the platforms. So this is really nice, and this has been a very useful tool. When mine came here, fortunately, so there's, let's see, 4 in each panel, 5 panels each, so that's 20 sensors per stage. And fortunately, all 40 sensors then came through alive, no DOAs or anything like that, which was good. I was a little worried, especially since the shipping crate it came, it was bare bones, didn't have excess padding or packaging to protect it, but everything seems to have come through all right. And I guess on that note, I have heard incidentally, when people have had DOA sensors or lights or anything like that, and I can say from my experience, StepManiaX has been really supportive, and Kyle Ward has been great, personally corresponds with everybody. If people have dead on arrival sensors, he usually just, I've heard some cases where he just sends out a bunch of extras. I haven't had that experience personally, but whenever I've had questions, the customer response has always been, very good and prompt by email. Haven't had to chase anybody down. Been a pleasure to work with, honestly. You can tell they do care about their customers. So, at least they've got that going for them. So back to the diagnostics. Now, you can see that for each square, I'm not sure how best to capture this. Let me step back for a bit. I'm just going to step on the top arrow here, and let's see if that comes through. Let me just recalibrate for a second. There you go. So you can see the top sensor is lit up, and that shows you the input that's coming to each of the 4 cardinal direction sensors inside this panel, which is very nice. There's some dip settings too that you can alter. You can change the sensitivities and recalibrate it if the panels, some of the panels did come a little too tight so that the panel is actually triggering on, the weather stripping that we saw there is what gives it its offset and its foamy springiness that lets you get the pressure differential. So like you can see, for instance, in this case, the back sensor on this one has a little bit of pressure on it, no big deal. And you can really fine tune the sensitivity on the individual panels to make it, crazy sensitive if you're playing, heavier charts and that kind of thing. I've had, I haven't had too much problem with the default setting in terms of how the, sensors actually perform and stuff like that. Maybe there's a couple of panels that I've had, like I said, loosen things up a little bit, make sure the foam and stuff is situated well for the sensor to prevent pad misses and that kind of thing, but it's been fine. And in terms of actually like testing the panels themselves, we've got this test mode down here. Now you saw it got a lot darker. And this is what that lets you do. I like this a lot. See, this, it's kind of hard to tell, but this actually says, the side sensor, the top arrow, that's each individual sensor lighting up if it is providing input. So you can just go through, give yourself a little tap on all of these pads, and, so this one, again, all 4 lighting up very easily. I'm not applying very much pressure at all. I can just tap these, so good for hands. And see the top, that one didn't light up, but there it is, the red one. Okay, so very easy way to diagnose. Like I said, that one's still registering a little bit of residual input. That's not enough to actually trigger the sensor. So you can see the lights on down there, but there's nothing up there. There would be the green panel right here would be lit up if it was registering. Let me actually click over to that. This is on a per panel basis. So I press down on that and see it's showing a very, very small input. So it's just showing it is getting something from there, which is what's causing that light to come on, but nothing that'll actually trigger the sensors or trigger an input or a press or anything like that. So you can play with that to your heart's content and tweak the settings and stuff like that, and it's all been fine. Let's see, in terms of so I have used them. I'm using StepManiaX 5, Simply Love, and honestly, in terms of the, let me get that test mode. That was the easiest part of the setup because, hi Nadia, that was the easiest part of the test mode, or the easiest part of the setup, because I just plugged them into the computer, USB ports, and they were instantly detected by StepMania, and no problems there. I guess, so let's talk about the actual performance of the pads themselves in use, because that's probably something that people care about more than anything else. Like I said, these sensors are very good, very sensitive. All of them got here fine. No problems with the motherboard, no problems with the setup, no problem detected. So let's talk things like input latency and that kind of thing. I guess just give you a little bit about perspective, or a little bit of input on my dance background. So it kind of like makes sense what perspective I'm looking at this from. I've been playing, Aero games, DDR, ITG, Pump It Up for like 10 years now. I mostly come from, I had a friend who actually had a refurbished arcade machine, ITG2, using those pads. I think that was a Ultra Mix cab conversion? Not entirely sure, but they were arcade pads. They were good arcade pads. He was way more of an enthusiast than me at the time. And, they were very high quality. So that's kind of like what I grew up on, so to speak. And I've been doing it for about 10 years. And these feel very comparable in terms of responsiveness. I'm still getting the setup locked down overall. That's just a low latency TV, something I found with a really good review for input lag for gaming modes and that kind of thing. So, getting StepMania to do a good frame rate, A little tip, by the way, don't pass your audio through HDMI. That is a bad idea. I'm having the audio coming directly out of the computer to the speakers rather than being fed through the HDMI, and that improves frame rate significantly. But so in terms of the audio, which I'm pretty confident on, is in a low latency, pretty good state right now. For songs I know, and I know I'm on beat 2, I don't have any latency whatsoever in terms of inputs and misses. No problems doing fantastic timing. Obviously I grew up on ITG, so there you go. So no problem with that whatsoever. It's been great, and there's no issues at all in terms of that regard. And I think once I get the screen stuff locked down and the frame rate stuff set up, that the input latency is going to look good too. Or the screen lag and stuff will be fine. But in terms of the audio, in terms of what I think is actually feeding through the machine, it feels very, very good, especially coming from the perspective of having played a lot at home on, well-maintained arcade pads with a high degree of sensitivity and, modded to be very sensitive and very responsive. It's been a couple years since I've actually played very much, so I've been getting back into it, and I've done so far up to, I think the hardest thing I've done on these is Max 300. And again, no problems with the timing or anything like that, any latency, any pad misses, nothing like that. So we appear to be in pretty good shape. All right, so this is getting pretty long, so I guess I'll wrap it up with some thoughts and overall impressions. Build quality is very, very high. These are very, very sturdy. Great pads. The acrylic plates are really rock solid. The pad itself is, really rock solid. I can get up on it. I'm gonna, jump up and down. And like I said, I'm a big guy. I'm like 230. It's not moving. This is not moving. I really have to muscle it to get any flex at all. You got no problems with that bar. You got no problems jumping up and down on this thing. Going really hard. So, that feels incredibly solid, incredibly stable. It's as close as I've ever seen to, arcade pad quality in something you can just order for your home. They are expensive, not going to lie. And, I guess, so there's been a couple of, let me turn these off, get the lights back on. So I want to talk about a couple of things that might bother people, might irritate some people, just for full disclosure, because I'm tending to gush about these things. So, that's the wrong light. So, the number one issue that I have with these pads is with regard to the spacing and the movement of the panels themselves. They're kind of squishy. They have I wouldn't say a ton of travel, and that's because of the weather stripping underneath. But what they do have, and I don't know if this is going to come through great on the phone, you can see the alignment of the pads is not really 100%, and they travel a little bit. Like, you can make them kind of move laterally. Not this direction I don't care about, but back and forth, there's a little bit more travel than I would like. And a little bit of, they're not as perfectly even across the entire surface as I would like. I think actually part of that is the middle pad is supposed to be a little bit recessed, just so like when you're using it, there is a middle pad input in StepManiaX. So that might be what's going on there. But I think there's a little bit of inconsistency with the foam stripping underneath in terms of the thickness. Not much, and I haven't noticed it even doing harder songs. But, I could definitely see people modding that, taking the backing that it comes with off, putting their own foam down, like really messing with it to change the sensitivity, the feel of the squishiness, and the amount of travel back and forth. I think maybe that's caused by, how most arcade machines will have a triangular bracket on the edge of each corner of sensing pads like this, the triangular silver guy. I think that prevents it from wiggling like this, back and forth and side to side. Let me just say, the finish on the acrylic stuff is great. Like my one other small gripe, and this is like minimal, is that the finish, the stainless steel finish, like any other stainless steel finish, it takes fingerprints really bad. But yeah, so the acrylic surface is just, fantastic, looks great. I'm able to scratch it with anything. I was really going at it to get some of the adhesive stuff off of my fingernails too, and just nothing. I dropped keys on it, nothing. But yeah, back to the point. There's a little bit more travel here. I think that's because there's no bracketing things on the edge of this. I haven't found it to be problematic, but I could see it as being the kind of thing that annoys people. So I did want to bring it up. The other thing was getting the power cord in particular situated was a little bit of a pain, because if you wiggle it from side to side, it tends to disconnect from the whole machine. So if this were on and I had the power cable exposed and I were to wiggle it hard like this back and forth, it turns the whole stage off much more easily than I would like for that particular component. Not sure what's causing that, but ever since I covered them up with the covers there and I've had them underneath, I haven't had any issues, and I've been kind of leaving it alone, but no problem with it like spontaneously powering down when playing or anything like that. But if you have something pressing up against those cables and you're losing power, that might be what your issue is. So let's see, is there anything else? Not really that I can think of. My overall impression of these things, let's just turn them on for a little outro here, is that these are very solid, excellent quality stages. They are very expensive, and they don't appear to be a perfect product. Like I said, there's just a couple of little things, but as close to perfect as I'm going to get. And really, the only thing from this point is are there going to be any problems over time? Is it going to last? Am I going to be as happy with this in 6 months or a year? Are the sensors going to hold up? That kind of thing. But that's something that only time will tell. Well, alrighty, thanks. Like I said, I just wanted to give some input because there's not a lot of info on this out there. These are pretty expensive, and I wanted to give some impressions from a home setup. If anybody has any questions, just feel to drop them in the comments. I'll probably throw this up on Reddit or something like that so people can look at it. And you guys have good luck. Get those quad A's.